Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are having a fabulous morning already. If you are here, let me know you're here. Just drop a comment, say good morning. Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. So if I don't say hi or don't answer your question, just know that it's just because I didn't see it. And I will when I get done. But in any case, I feel darker than usual today. Good morning, Miss Barbara. I feel dark this morning. Anyway, I guess my lighting's okay. It just seems odd. Okay, if you are new to my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a nana, a girlfriend, jazzerciser, runner, wellness advocate, studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, which means not a counselor yet. Everything I talk about here is based either on my own research, what I'm learning, with my own and personal experiences laced in. And I started Wellness Wednesday because I have been in a lifelong journey with anxiety and depression. And I will specify that that has been a functional anxiety and depression because we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But that's essentially what I was diagnosed with, was functional anxiety and depression that dates back probably to my childhood. And it was on my heart to share my experiences because what I have found is that the more I talk to others about their experiences and about my experiences, the more we can reciprocate learning and trying different things that work for some people, work for don't, and don't for others. Ooh, words are going to be hard today, y'all. And that when we talk about it, not only does it normalize the conversation, but it helps us to learn from each other. You know, a lot of times anything in life is like throwing spaghetti noodles at the wall. We keep tossing things at the wall to see what sticks and what doesn't, right? And what sticks for one person may not for another. So there may be things here that you've tried before that don't work. And there may be things that you haven't tried that do. And you may be able to teach me a thing or two, which is why I always encourage commenting, asking questions, sharing your own experiences, because that's what this is about. All right. So if you have been following me for a while, you know that I just wrapped up last week a three-part mini series, that I call the Feed Yourself mini series. And last week's challenge, if you did it, was to do one thing that fills you up, not drains you. Because last week we talked about feeding your heart and soul, to call somebody you actually wanted to talk to sit in quiet for 10 minutes. I have notes over here. That's why I keep looking this way. To do something that you enjoy without guilt. That's often really hard for a lot of us. To help someone on purpose, or to spend time in prayer, reflection, gratitude, meditation, whatever your lane is. But I find that no matter what your lane is as far as spirituality, gratitude usually crosses all of those lanes. So if you did the challenge last week, let me know, and let me know how that worked out for you. If you're not comfortable sharing publicly, then by all means, please feel free to shoot me a message. And let's get started on this week. So this week I wanted to change gears a little bit. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And in the past years, we have talked about misunderstood mental health conditions. We've talked about statistics. We've talked about awareness campaigns, and I've shared a little bit of my own story, which you guys get a little piece of almost every single week. This year, I can throw statistics at you, but they're nothing you haven't heard. The most important one, of course, or the most important ones to me, basic, we can just run through the laundry list of them, that are probably the heaviest statistics you're seeing right now on social media and in any kind of education thing for Mental Health Awareness Month, is that 1 in 5 adults experience mental illness yearly, anxiety disorders being the most common, and that half of people who need treatment never receive it. That's for various reasons. Suicide rates are rising in several demographics, which is a little bit alarming. And 50% of all mental health conditions begin by age 15. 75% begin by age 24. So there's the laundry list of basic statistics. I am the local NAMI affiliate program director for NAMI Citrus. We just did our mental health awareness walk about 10 days ago. And those are some of the things we focus on. So those are stats that pretty much everybody is aware of. But stats don't really help us a lot always. I mean, some of us are numbers people, but we need a little bit more behind that. So this year, I want to talk about something I think a lot of us still believe deep down. And that is that we have to fall apart before we deserve support. We have to be in a crisis or a catastrophe. Good morning, Miss Heather. And we have to be hitting rock bottom before we can deserve or earn support. And that's so not true. I had a recent conversation about how often I've questioned my own self, because as I study, and just in my life in general, I encounter people, fictitious case clients, things like that, that just seem, their situations, their experiences are so extreme. And when we have something like functional anxiety and depression, it can seem like, well, we just don't have it that bad. So many other people have it worse. Why? Heather, I don't know if I said good morning, but good morning. I should be able to handle this. I'm still functioning, so I just need to ignore it. I'll deal with it later. If you've ever had that conversation with yourself, or if you've ever thought that to yourself, then this conversation is for you today. Because when we know that we're struggling, but we begin to question whether or not we should be, because of what we are seeing or hearing about somebody else, that maybe their struggle is just more public, it's more visible, it seems more intense, then we begin to think that we should just get over it and move on. And a lot of times, for years and years and years, a lot of us from certain generations, that's just what we've been taught, that we just need to suck it up, buttercup. So why does this topic matter, and especially during Mental Health Awareness Month? So one of the biggest mental health myths is that we have to hit rock bottom before we can ask for help. Is that somehow being at our absolute max, at our absolute limit, just to where we cannot bear it anymore, is what's required to give us permission to ask for help. And that's problematic. So as we've discussed for several weeks now, we often normalize stress. We normalize worry, burnout, overwhelm, emotional exhaustion, and we find ourselves in constant survival mode until these things become unbearable. But survival mode isn't how we are supposed to operate. That's not how we're supposed. It serves us on a short-term basis, but it doesn't serve us over the long term to constantly be in survival mode. And there are some people who are so much in survival mode all the time that their fight, flight, freeze, fawn, it's 4 F's now, response just doesn't even shut off. It just keeps going even when there's literally no threat. So a lot of people, many people wait years before they seek support. And that's another statistic we can toss out, which is that the average delay between onset and treatment is around 11 years. Sometimes it's because we wait to seek treatment because of stigma, because of several different things. Sometimes it's not due to waiting, but it's due to the way the system works. That, y'all, is a conversation, a rabbit hole for another day. That may be something I think about touching on maybe later this month or later on. But for today, we want to talk about mental health like preventative care. And that's realistically, that's kind of the direction that most of these Wellness Wednesdays go, is how can we operate in more of a preventative, proactive state, as opposed to waiting until the world is on fire in our heads before we actually ask for help. So when we think preventative care, we think about checkups and screenings and dental cleanings and going to the doctor to get our blood work run and vitamins and exercise, right? So why do we wait until there's a crisis to do any kind of mental or emotional preventative care? Which again, like I said, has been the underlying theme of Wellness Wednesday all along. So in real life, a lot of times this looks like, I'm just tired. It's just stress. That's just my personality. And y'all, that's really what I thought. Now, I've shared my story or pieces of it several times, but I really just thought this was my personality because it had been with me for so long. I thought I was wired wrong. I thought it was my personality. And I just truly felt alone. So when we look at Mental Health Awareness Month themes like nobody walks alone, it's okay to not be okay, I truly felt like I was walking alone all the time. As I was growing up, I just felt like there was nobody else that was quite like me. Nobody understood or thought the way that I did. And I thought that probably until at least my early 30s, I was 28 when I was finally diagnosed. And that was the result of a marital counseling appointment, not an actual, hey, I'm seeking treatment. I mean, I kind of knew that there were some things off, but I really didn't have names for it. I really didn't understand it. Again, I just thought this was my personality. And when we think that it's just our personality, that we're just wired that way and that's it, there's nothing we can do about it, that puts us in survival mode. That means we just kind of bump along and we just kind of do what we can to get through. Other common real life thoughts are this: everybody feels this way, I'm fine. And we put a great show on of functioning through daily life, painting on the smile, doing the things, while we're really struggling so hard inside that it's difficult. I can remember so many times getting through the day and then coming home or getting in my vehicle to drive home from work and just bawling all the way home because I was so overwhelmed and I was so stressed out and I had everything that happened during the course of the day on repeat and I just felt exhausted. And sometimes I was in a spiral over other people's things that they had going on, not even my own, because I was absorbing everything that everybody else had going on. And y'all, that's not normal. That's not normal. That's not thriving. That's surviving. That's putting on a show. So functioning and thriving are not the same. And we deserve so much more. And what happens is, I'm a huge fan of compartmentalization, just to be clear. I don't mean that if our life is falling apart everywhere else, that we should take it on and everybody around us at work. Okay? I am a huge fan of compartmentalization. Sometimes that can be to a fault. While I don't like taking personal stuff to work and vice versa. And if I'm upset with one person, I work very hard not to take it out on everybody around me. Or if I'm upset with myself, I work very hard not to take it out on everyone around me. Because I understand that not everybody around me is the reason I'm in that state. But compartmentalization can go too far, where we compartmentalize so much that we have this teeny tiny little compartment for how we're feeling inside and how we're dealing with it, and it just keeps getting pushed back. And that is never, ever, ever healthy. So what happens is we use humor and we use busyness and we use overachievement and caretaking as coping mechanisms. And listen, I have a loved one who simply cannot have a serious conversation without throwing 5 jokes in there. And then I occasionally catch myself doing it and I go, runs in the family. But we use humor. We use humor a lot. We use busyness, overachievement, caretaking, and we minimize the importance of our symptoms because we're still working. We're still parenting. We're still showing up. We're still smiling. We're still joking. We're still volunteering. So that means everything is fine, right? And I know there's a couple generations of us that were told no matter how you feel, show up, dress up. And I can agree with that. Again, like the compartmentalization to a point, but not to the point where we just keep degrading in our feelings, in our abilities, in our inner function to the point where we are barely functioning on the outside, where we're barely putting on that show. So, as you know, as I've talked about many times, I absolutely don't believe, and this is the general consensus, that recovery is not a finish line. It's not a finish line. It's not a goal. It is a constant, ongoing maintenance. Every time I think or try to tell myself or try to tell even you that I'm recovered from my depression, that I'm recovered from my anxiety, I will find myself, getting closer and closer to the edge of that cliff. And I feel very fortunate that I'm self-aware enough now that I notice when I'm getting close to that cliff. I learn to recognize the signs, and I can call myself out basically, and I can pull myself back and say, Donna, what's going on with you? And then I start looking at all the things. What have I not been doing that I know works? Is my diet out of whack? Am I not exercising? Am I not leaning into my faith? Have I changed something that's am I drinking too much caffeine? All of these things contribute. And I feel very, very blessed to be able to identify that as it's happening instead of when I'm already hanging on a rope over the edge of the abyss. You know what I'm saying? Because it's when I catch it earlier, I'm able to pull myself back a little faster. So it's not a finish line. I have dealt with functional anxiety and depression, crippling social anxiety at times, disordered eating, a history of feeling unsafe, unheard, bullied, all of these things. And I never realized how everything was connected until I started reflecting. And ironically, I had a family member that said I always personalized everything and turned everything inward and reflected too much. And I'm kind of thankful for that. While it may not have been ideal at the time as a kid, the fact that I am so reflective has helped me become more self-aware, and it has helped me to recognize these signs and start moving forward in a healing journey, which is really super important. So, yes, I may have blamed everything on myself, and I may have tried to carry blame for everything, including stuff that wasn't mine. But that constant internal reflection, coupled with education and real life experience, has led me where I am, which is that I can recognize when I'm just screwing up, or when I'm not paying enough attention to myself, or when I'm, just not doing what I need to be doing. In any case, so why do we wait so long? Why do we wait too long to take ourselves seriously? Because that's a problem. We're so busy making jokes and being busy and taking care of everybody else that we wait too long. Why do we do that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Stigma. The truth of the matter is that there's still a lot of people that even if they'll comment on my video or comment on another Mental Health Awareness Month post and say, yes, we need to fix mental health, when it actually comes time to have conversations, they don't want to do it. They don't want to be associated with it. They would rather stay in the background and hope that it gets better than actually be part, good morning, Miss Danielle, of making that change. And we wait too long because we fear judgment. It's the same thing as stigma. It's basically just another way of saying it. We have been taught or been raised to believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness, or it's a sign of drama, that we're being dramatic, or that we're seeking attention. Again, I can't repeat this enough. We've talked about it already, believing that someone else has it worse, so we just need to keep our mouths shut. Somebody else has it worse, so whatever we have is not too bad. But remember that everybody has their own thresholds of pain. And everybody's journey looks different than everybody else's. So just because we see somebody that seems to be struggling more visibly in real life doesn't mean whatever we're experiencing is less or not as bad, because we all have our own thresholds. Or we get to a point where survival mode becomes a comfort zone. And we know what happens when we're in a comfort zone. We don't want to leave it, because the devil we know is always better than the devil we don't know, right? And sometimes we are afraid of what happens if we slow down and actually start to acknowledge it. So again, that comfort zone versus beginning to acknowledge what's going on and trying to change it. Well, then that means possibly our whole social circle is going to change. Our whole outlook is going to change. Mine did. While there are still some key people that are part of my social circle, a lot of people that were part of my social circle back in the days where my anxiety was really high and my social anxiety was really high are not the same people that are in my circle now. I've talked many times about how the more I got used to being around someone positive, the more I craved being around positive people. instead of the negativity that I was surrounded with at the time. So, we've been taught we need to tough it out. We've been taught to keep pushing, to not speak it so that we don't give it life. I've been guilty of saying that. And there's some different schools of thought on that too, and some we've talked about, but that's not for today. Again, get over it. So there's lots of reasons why we wait too long. And that's almost always to our detriment. So what does help actually look like if you're not in a crisis when you start to seek it? It looks like therapy or counseling. And I've talked about this before, and I think fairly recently. We have this belief that we have to have a diagnosis to go to therapy. There are so many different kinds of therapy and so many different kinds of counseling out there. You could start out with a life coach or a wellness coach if you just feel like you're off and you need some lifestyle changes, and you can start there, and you would be surprised how much of a difference that would make. Just do your research and check credentials, because credentialing for that kind of thing is a little bit different, which is part of the reason why I chose to study for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, because that way, no matter what direction I chose to go in, whether it was actual mental health counseling or life coaching or whatever, or all of that rolled up into some weird hybrid, I had educational credentials behind me, because that was really important to me. So peer support. Peer support is a great thing. For example, NAMI Citrus support, all NAMI support groups, not just NAMI Citrus. NAMI doesn't require a diagnosis. They don't require proof of diagnosis. So if you know that you have all the signs of anxiety, and that's probably not just NAMI Citrus either. Most support groups don't require a diagnosis. So most of your peer support groups. And peer support means the group is other people that are experiencing what you're experiencing. And usually they're run by people who are experiencing what you're experiencing. So if you know you have all the symptoms of anxiety, you can go to an anxiety support group. And most of the time, you're not going to be required to produce a diagnosis or proof of such. Clinician-led support groups are also great, but a lot of times you do have to have, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes you do have to have a diagnosis to get into those groups. However, sometimes they are clinician-led skill-building type groups that teach you coping skills and things like that. And you don't always have to have, a lot of times those are advertised. Those are advertised in places like the YMCA or local gyms or whatever. And it'll be like, if you're experiencing this, this, and this, come join this group. And a lot of times then a diagnosis is not required. Lifestyle changes are a form of help. They are a form of seeking help. Setting boundaries, rest, spiritual and community-based support, education, self-awareness, all these things. Learning healthier coping skills, medication when appropriate. That usually requires a diagnosis, or at least seeing your primary care physician, or just talking honestly with someone that you trust. These are all forms of seeking help. And guess what? A catastrophe is not required for any of them. You don't have to be at rock bottom. You don't have to be glued to your bed in the morning, unable to get up or function. You can do these things when you feel yourself slipping towards that cliff. You can go seek help then and maybe prevent it from turning into something more long-term. And that's just really super important. And that's kind of what Mental Health Awareness Month is all about. It's about bringing attention to stigmas and fears of being judged and normalizing the conversations and promoting mental health as part of your overall health so that it's okay to seek help when you need it. It's no different than going and getting a checkup if you feel like something's off. Or if you don't feel good for a couple of days, then you go and get checked out. It should not. It is no different, and it should not be any different. But we continue, although there have been improvements, we continue to treat mental health as this whole separate animal by itself that only deserves to be looked at when it's newsworthy. And that's as far as I'm going to say about that, but y'all know what I'm talking about. And it's those extreme cases that we see on the news and on social media that make us look at ourselves and go, oh, it's not that bad. I don't need any attention right now. And again, everybody's got a different threshold. So that's, whew. So what can we do then to make this easier for everyone? Since we're talking about preventative care and we're talking about Mental Health Awareness Month, we can normalize conversations surrounding mental health. And that means sometimes that starts with us. If we know we're struggling, it starts with us opening our mouths and saying we're struggling. I'm struggling. Where can I find help? What do you think I should do? What do I think I should do? And that generally means reaching out and having a conversation with that person that we trust, that honest conversation with that person that we trust, that we know isn't going to be like, oh, you just need to suck it up. You're fine. Give me a break. That's not the person we need to be having the conversation with. And those of us that are responding in that way need to take a good hard look at the conversations we are having. Because what we're doing is if we're saying that to people, we're dismissing their feelings. Our friends, our loved ones, we're dismissing their feelings instead of helping them feel seen and heard. What we can do is normalize the conversations. We can stop joking about serious symptoms. And I will drop a link in the comments of a video I did that ended up turning into a whole series about misunderstood mental health conditions, because so often we use symptoms, real mental health disorder symptoms, as descriptions of other people's personalities. Oh, she's so bipolar. She's so moody all the time. She's so bipolar. When there's so much more to bipolar than that. Or if somebody's having an extra good day and they're extra chipper, maybe they've had a little too much caffeine, somebody, might look at them and be like, oh, he's manic today. That's not okay. I've referred to the weather as bipolar, which also still is not ideal, but these are just not using real mental health symptoms to describe somebody's personality when we know very little about mental health, about these conditions it just adds to the stigma and it adds to the shame. And if somebody is standing in a room where you've said something like that about somebody else, but they actually do have bipolar disorder, how likely do you think they are to speak up, to say, hey, I have this problem? If we're using those symptoms to make jokes about somebody else's moodiness or about the weather, and somebody else is in the room that actually has been diagnosed with that and is trying to figure out how to manage it, how likely do you think they will be to tell their story or come forward when they need help, if that's the kind of stuff they're hearing? So again, we need to normalize real conversations. We need to stop joking about serious symptoms or using them to describe personality traits. We need to check on people for real, not just at you good. Sometimes that looks like a hard conversation, like, I've noticed, you've been absent for a couple of days. You seem like you're struggling. Is there anything I can do for you? Do you need to talk? Not just, hey, you good? I know I have friends that were like, hey, you good? And if the other person says, yeah, then we move on with the day. But we need to check on people for real. And then if we model honesty and vulnerability, then a lot of times that helps somebody else display that too. I am never, ever proud when I start getting emotional on these videos, ever. I don't, because my voice shakes and my lips shakes and I make funny faces and my face turns red and I sound funny. But when it's an important topic that means something to me, that vulnerability, that's my authentic self showing. And if that helps somebody else to feel like they can be honest or authentic, then it's accomplished what it needed to accomplish. Much as I try to stay controlled and compartmentalized, doesn't always work, right? You guys have seen it before. Learn the warning signs. Support organizations that provide resources, like NAMI, that provides free resources for its area, whatever area it's serving. NAMI Citrus provides them in Citrus County. And share our stories carefully and responsibly. And of course, seek support sooner rather than later. It's okay to need support. It's okay to not know what kind of support you need, to go talk to a trusted one, to go talk to your primary care physician. All of those things are okay. It's okay to not know where to start. So That's what help can actually look like. It doesn't require catastrophe or for you to hit rock bottom, to need it, to seek it, to want it, any of those things. Okay? And a lot of times, certain professionals are taught to screen to see if you need other professionals. So I know another big thing that holds a lot of us back is, well, then I'm going to have a diagnosis, and then that's going to affect everything I do. And unfortunately, insurance coverage does require 99.9% of the time that some kind of diagnosis be made. It's not who you are. It's a label. It's a title for symptoms. It's not who you are as a person. So, my challenge to you, I hope you found this helpful. My challenge to you this week is to identify one area of your mental or emotional wellness that you've been minimizing or that you've been pushing through, and then ask yourself, what would support look like before crisis? And what would it look like to take myself seriously now instead of later when I don't have a choice? Or the other thing that you can do is have one, or have one honest conversation this week, even if it's just admitting to someone that you trust that I'm struggling more than I'm saying and I need to talk. That's it. That's my challenge for you this week, is to do one of those things, to identify an area where you're minimizing or pushing through, or to start a conversation with someone that says I'm struggling more than I've been saying or than I've been willing to admit. So, again, I hope you found this helpful. I want you to remember these things. You don't have to earn help by falling apart. You deserve help at the moment that you think that you need it. Someone can look fine and still be struggling. That's the whole basis of that. We never know what's going on in somebody else's life, so be kind to everyone. That's the whole basis of that. Is most of the time, a lot of times, the people that are struggling the most are the ones that never show it. And just know that strong people ask for help too. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. In fact, more often than not, it's a sign of strength, because you know your limits. It's a sign that you know your limits, and you know when you have to swallow your pride and reach out. Healing and recovery are almost never linear. Don't forget that. It's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of up and down. It's not a finish line. It is a journey, and it is almost never linear. In fact, I like to describe it as, I describe a lot of things. If y'all remember Pigpen from Peanuts and the little cloud that always followed him, that's how I describe my workouts. That's how I describe my recovery. All of it. Never linear. In fact, that's also how I describe, my plan, God's plan. Same thing. It can be applied to a lot of things. So, and remember that you have resources. There are free resources out there to get you started. NAMI. If you're not local, if you're local, start with NAMI Citrus. If you're not local, you can go to the NAMI.org website, find an affiliate that's local to you, find resources online. There's online classes. We have virtual classes. We have a question, persuade, refer, suicide prevention class coming up at the beginning of June. Very, very limited seating. So lots of local resources, lots of national resources. If you're struggling with addiction, there's Club Recovery. There's there's AA. There's all kinds of different peer support, 12-step groups. And if you feel like you're in crisis or you're having suicidal ideation, there's the 988 suicide and crisis line. You can text 988. You can go to the website. There's a lot of things. And I'll drop some resources in the comments for you to get you started, along with some videos where I've covered some of the stuff before that'll link to my YouTube channel, so that you can check out old videos where we've talked about this. But in the meantime, I hope you found this helpful. And if you did find it helpful, please share. Especially on Mental Health Awareness Month, but anytime, someone may need to see this to give them permission to stop waiting to seek help. So if you did find this helpful, please share. Again, if it's something you want to be able to refer back to after Facebook takes it down in 30 days, my YouTube channel, all these videos will be there. This one will be up within the hour. And just know that we deserve to thrive instead of just surviving. and that there's a lot of ways that we can seek help to do that, and we don't have to be in crisis. So with that said, I hope you have a fabulous day, a great week. I hope you take advantage of the challenge and kind of reflect on where you've been minimizing your symptoms or pushing through, or just have an honest conversation with someone if you're struggling a little bit. Until next Wednesday, be well.